Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. As always, I am joined by fellow co-founder, the man himself, the man with the nut, FFPC main event team. It is, of course, Evan Silva. Evan, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man? Finally, the Eli era is over. We've got a chance to have some good football back in the Meadowlands, or at least from one team that plays the Meadowlands.
Yeah.
Because that Jets-Browns game was a disaster by the Jets, defensively and offensively. Love to see that 89-yard touchdown right in Greg Williams' fake glasses-wearing eye, though. That's fantastic.
It is good. Greg Williams is such a dork. It's crazy. Okay. We need to get into it here, Evan. Week 2 brought a ton of injury news, a ton of it. We also learned a ton more about these teams, about these players. We also had Eli Manning benched, as you mentioned. So we thought it would be good to go team by team once again, just like last week. This episode 17, will be the NFC and is free, just a small sliver of all the content / information that we're putting out on a week-to-week basis behind the paywall at Establish the Run. Episode 18 will cover the AFC, and we'll also take some subscriber questions. So for anyone out there listening who hasn't signed up yet, we do have a monthly option out there. We do have a matchups, rankings, waiver wire only option out there. Get in there. Okay, Evan, let's get into it with the NFC. We're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. And yeah, Arizona has had some difficult spots to start the season. I think Detroit's defense, is reasonably solid. Obviously, playing at Baltimore is difficult. Christian Kirk had a nice game, would top the buy low model, had a really nice game, 20 points at 2% ownership. What stands out to me, though, Evan, is Kyler Murray's running usage. And it's as if he's not even like taking the rushing lanes that are there. I mean, if you told me Kyler Murray had 17 rush yards through the first 2 games, I would say you're absolutely insane. Is that a fluke? Will Kyler Murray's rushing numbers increase as we move on here?
I definitely think that he is not comfortable yet running the football in the NFL, which, I mean, I don't blame him. He's like the smallest dude on the field every time he lines up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll come. I think that it'll become more comfortable after he breaks a couple. But, yeah, right now I don't think that we can make any assumptions in terms of his statistical projection regarding his rushing usage week to week.
Anything else on Arizona? We got a scare with David Johnson's wrist.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to be okay.
Yeah, I got a scare with David Johnson's wrist. Christian Kirk hit. He was the number 1 wide receiver in Josh Hermsmeyer's air yards by low model, exclusive to EstablishTheRun.com this year. Big hit, went from 4 for 32 in week 1 to 6 for 114 to lead the Cardinals in week 2. So we will take that W. I'm sorry. And the haters will take the L. The haters will take the L.
There's definitely a lot of haters out there. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons, the big thing about me is I was so tilted that this game was not on the main slate. Just a perfect setup for Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, to me, a guy that I was trying to be high on in the preseason. It's going as expected. I think 16 targets in 2 games. What's not going as expected, Evan, is this Devonta Freeman disaster. And yeah, it's been tough. You know, the Eagles have a very good rush defense. The week 1 game up in Minnesota got away from them quickly. Another really tough spot. But Ito Smith is playing more than I expected. And the run game is struggling, I think, as a whole, more than I expected. Everybody wants to know what they should be doing with Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, and the Falcons lost their starting first-round guard, Chris Lindstrom, to a foot fracture. They've had to play some musical chairs on the offensive line there. First-round right tackle Caleb McGarry was in and out of the game on Sunday night. So they're often and he was out for most of almost the entire preseason due to heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So they have not had continuity on the offensive line. They've gone up against 2 of the best defensive fronts, as you mentioned, the Eagles and the Vikings. Now they're facing a Colts team that has really struggled in run defense so far and gives up a ton of production in the passing game to RBs. Devonta Freeman has really only made 1 good play so far this year, and it came on a 29-yard shovel pass on Sunday night against the Eagles where he got tackled inside the 5. The narrative might be a little bit different if he had scored that touchdown. He did have 14 touches to Ito Smith's 6. He's playing 60% of the snaps. Ito's at 40. So he is the lead. He's not a workhorse back. He's not a bell cow back. He's not a feature back. He's the lead back in a running back by committee, and we need to adjust down expectations. But I do think that he's a good start this week in season long. In daily fantasy, probably just not enough usage.
Let's go to Carolina because it's clear to anybody with two eyes that Cam Newton was playing injured. And man, I love Cam. I thought Cam would have a big year this year, getting back from the shoulder. Now it seems he's having a foot injury. He looks withered. And I've seen, speculation out there. Well, they use Cam like a running back, right? Like Cam played like a running back. Maybe his career will be short like a running back was. And I hate to see that because Cam is just such an awesome player and an awesome fantasy player, but now he's questionable. I mean, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. The word out of Carolina today was, man, it looks shaky for Cam to play in week 3. If Cam plays, can we start him? And if not, do you have any thoughts for the people on Kyle Allen? Because we actually didn't see a lot of Kyle Allen in the preseason this year because they used Will Greer a little bit more. But yeah, what's going on with Cam and the Carolina quarterbacks?
I mean, based on the news that we have, and we're recording this just in the early afternoon on Tuesday, trying to get it out there for people doing waiver runs. I mean, Cam is real close to droppable right now in season long. I was actually going to maybe look at him as a contrarian daily fantasy tournament play this week, but he re-injured his foot, and he wasn't at practice on Tuesday. Coming off the long week. And I mean, based on the information that we have right now, like I'm not expecting him to play in week 3. Maybe that'll change by the time this comes out or later in the week. But yeah, I'm worried about his health now.
What about Kyle Allen? Do you have anything for the people on Kyle Allen?
Yeah, I mean, he played really well in a week 17 spot start last year. I remember he was a huge high school recruit that kind of bounced around a little bit in college. And yeah, we didn't see much of him this preseason because they played Will Greer so much. But I mean, I think that Kyle Allen might be a little bit better than we think, but it's still real dicey for DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen, Christian McCaffrey. You certainly would much rather have a healthy Cam out there, or even an 85% Cam than Kyle Allen, I think.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about a bunch of these backup quarterback situations as we go along through these team by teams, because there's a lot of teams playing with new and backup quarterbacks. I do think I would agree with Evan that Kyle Allen is one of the better ones that's stepping in to a job. Doesn't mean that he'll be nearly as good as Cam. The Chicago Bears, Evan, I thought it was notable that David Montgomery's usage started to increase off of week 1. He got 67% of the running back carries. He also got 3 targets. It seems like maybe David Montgomery is separating nice and early from Mike Davis. That's encouraging. Obviously, going to Denver was not a great spot, but they will have better spots going forward. What's your outlook on the Bears' backfield?
Yeah, big step forward for David Montgomery. Tariq Cohen, we had him in the Shiloh 40 this year. He just really has not gotten it going, and I don't think he will. I mean, it was such a big hit to him that David Montgomery and Mike Davis can catch. Whereas, last year he was quote unquote competing for running back targets with Jordan Howard, who literally can't catch. So that was always going to be a really big hit. The Trubisky has been an absolute disaster, and he's finally going to get, although he has faced 2 really difficult matchups. I mean, Green Bay is looking like a stud defense, and playing at Denver against Vic Fangio was never going to be a good spot for him. He does get to face Washington in 3, so hopefully he can perform a little bit better. Josh Norman has just looked like toast, and Allen Robinson is still playing well. But yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to like right now in Chicago outside of Allen Robinson and Dave Montgomery.
Yeah, Josh Norman is just done, and Quentin Dunbar, I was reading today, might not be able to play this week or anytime in the foreseeable future either for the Redskins secondary. I mean, this secondary is one that I want to attack. Unfortunately, I would actually want to play Trubisky, Allen Robinson stacks, but it is not on the main slate this week. Dallas had a bad injury on a guy that we both really like Michael Gallup went down. Looks like he's going to miss 2 to 4 weeks with some type of knee scope, I believe. However, that does bring into play Devin Smith. And this is one of the waiver guys that I want to talk about because I was impressed with Devin Smith in the preseason, man. I played him a bunch, former second round pick of the Jets, had some really bad injury luck, but he looks like he has all his speed back. And Devin Smith was a flat baller in preseason. Now he gets to play with Dak, and I could see him playing every snap opposite Amari Cooper. And I don't think, people are like, oh, what about Randall Cobb? Well, I don't think Randall Cobb's role really changes. The one who's getting the role change here is Devin Smith. So, what do you think about Devin Smith as a waiver ad, Evan?
Yeah, exactly. So Randall Cobb has been like 89% slot, and Michael Gallup through 2 games only had 1 catch for 8 yards in the slot. This is not really necessarily a situation where Randall Cobb is going to get elevated. I think it's just going to be a situation where Devin Smith jumps in 1 for 1 into the Michael Gallup role. I think that Amari Cooper, because he plays outside, could benefit. Michael Gallup was leading the team in air yards and targets through 2 games. Amari's been great, but I think that Amari has a chance to be even greater. Devin Smith is going to be really, really interesting in week 3 because we're going to have Xavier Howard on Amari Cooper, and Devin Smith is going to have chances against like Jamal Wiltz and Eric Rowe, who have been just getting absolute destroyed by opposing wide receivers. And we'll talk about this kind of stuff much, much more on Friday. But Devin Smith is a priority waiver ad, especially if you need someone to play right away in week 3. I mean, I think he's a wide receiver 3 starter immediately. And we will be talking about him as a DFS play as the week progresses.
Love it. Big week for team preseason this week, Evan. I'm actually nervous,
Yes.
but it's a big week for team preseason. We're going to talk about a bunch more of these guys. Detroit, I didn't have a lot on Detroit. I think Carry-On's usage just, we can bitch all we want, but it is what it is. He's going to play around 50 to 60% of the snaps and handle about 50 to 60% of the running back touches unless there's an injury. It just is what it is. I know people were disappointed with TJ Hawkinson. We talked about how week 1 was going to be the best spot that Detroit would find all year, facing Arizona, going to overtime, et cetera, et cetera. I thought TJ Hawkinson would be better in the box score than he ended up being, but I did expect a regression, and he still is running a route on 73% of Matthew Stafford's dropbacks this season, right in line with Mark Andrews, 74%, and slightly behind Darren Waller, 86%. Did you have anything on Detroit you wanted to talk about, Evan?
Not really. I would say that, Kenny Golladay really, really balled out in week 2. Big touchdown right in Casey Hayward's grill. That's impressive. He's clearly the alpha over Marvin Jones. And Marvin Jones, as we discussed last week, he's kind of approaching the point of like being droppable in season long. The big thing was, we talked about it, like that week 1 game was so inflated by overtime and playing against the Cardinals, and then you lose like 20 snaps and Hawkinson busts, and Amendola, I don't even think he had a catch in the game, and so that's just that's why Pat Thorman's article can be so valuable. That's why adding context to things like this and understanding that when don't just look at last week's box score, you need some context added to that box score. And that's how we kind of knew to avoid Amendola and, just didn't have as much confidence in Hawkinson because that game was so inflated from a number of plays standpoint and a box score standpoint.
Yep. Let's go to Green Bay. Aaron Jones looked like he separated a little bit more from Jamal Williams, but only outsnapped him 42 to 32. The carries were where the big disparity was. Aaron Jones, 23 carries, Jamal Williams, 9, but Jamal Williams did run more routes. I'm optimistic that in better matchups, and Aaron Jones has a very tough schedule to start, in better matchups, we'll see some pop games from Aaron Jones still, but I just hate to see Jamal Williams out there catching so many balls and running so many routes, Evan.
Yeah, the final numbers look good for Aaron Jones still. It was kind of tilting to see him get vultured early in the game. Jamal Williams played on the first drive. But Aaron Jones did kind of run away with it, and he played well. So definitely like to see that. Devontae Adams bounced back immediately as expected from a slow opener. The offense is still not on track, though. They got off to a really hot start. They jumped out to an early 21-0 lead, didn't score the rest of the way. So very much still a work in progress. Offensively is Green Bay. Their defense is carrying this team.
As we move to the Rams here, people want to know about Darrell Henderson. Evan, I know we talked about it last week. He's a stash. It depends how big your bench is. We still think there's a chance Todd Gurley is going to break down, at which point Darrell Henderson would likely fill, the 1B role to Malcolm Brown. But with people with short benches, I mean, Darrell Henderson played 0 snaps. I think we can just move on. I mean, he's played 2 snaps through 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's in like the Darwin Thompson sort of situation right now. Number 3 back in a good offense where the health ahead of him is a little bit shaky, and he's going to need to catch a break to become a factor. So yeah, I mean, if you can afford to stash that, then do it. Like I'm stashing him wherever I possibly can. If you think that there are better guys to devote bench stash spots to, then go for it.
I don't have much on Minnesota other than it's just so obviously Dalvin Cook season. Like, he just ripped off another huge run. He's done it in every game that he's played, including the preseason. I mean, it's just hard for Dalvin Cook to fail with this scheme, with his role. He outtouched Alexander Madison. I think it was like 24-4 this past week, and now he gets a home game against the Raiders. Does Dalvin Cook? I mean, obvious lock for Dalvin Cook. I don't really have much else on the Vikings. Do you?
No, not really. I mean, Dalvin is going to be, I would expect him to be maybe the most popular play. I mean, we'll see based on pricing. I haven't looked at any pricing yet here on early Tuesday afternoon, but I would expect him to be maybe the highest owned or the most popular play on the slate this week, and for a good reason.
All right. This New Orleans situation, man, sucks about Drew Brees. I've seen Teddy Bridgewater play a reasonable amount because he played a bunch in the preseason last year. He got a week 17 spot start last year. He played a bunch this year preseason, like full halves at a time. I have not been that impressed with Teddy Bridgewater, and I don't love to say that because I thought Teddy Bridgewater was a pretty good prospect coming out and would succeed, and maybe the injury that he suffered up in Minnesota has tanked his career a bit, but he was outplayed by Taysom Hill throughout the preseason. They're going to start Teddy. I'm not optimistic about Teddy sustaining the value for Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. And like, I know people want to say like when these backup quarterbacks come in, well, they'll just run the ball more. It'll be fine for Alvin Kamara. Like, it's just not it. Like, you are going to lose red zone opportunities. You are going to lose time of possession. When your offense is not as efficient, you don't get as many plays off. So there's a lot of reasons to downgrade the Saints guys. What do you think about Teddy at this point in his career? And how much are you downgrading Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara?
Really takes down the value of a guy like Latavius Murray, because your thought process behind a guy like that is that this is going to be an octane offense where going to dominate, pretty much facets. Their offense is good, their defense is good, their offensive line is great. With regard to Teddy, yeah, I mean, I think that he's like at risk of losing too many snaps to Taysom Hill to be usable in any kind of a format. I would prioritize him in 2 quarterback leagues below Daniel Jones, below Mason Rudolph. It's not a good situation. I mean, Michael Thomas' expectation, I think, goes way down. I mean, he's still going to get a good number of targets, but they're going to be less efficient targets based on Taysom Hill playing more. And he's not a passing quarterback really. And then Teddy Bridgewater, a big downgrade from Drew Brees. So yeah, I mean, it's a big gut punch to the entire offense.
Call me crazy. I think the Saints should get back Ryan Griffin and they'd still be on track to make the playoffs. And when they get Drew Brees back, am I insane?
I mean, that's aggressive. That's aggressive.
Okay. Speaking of quarterbacks, except an upgrade, this isn't like out of thin air. Evan and I aren't just like trying to pile on Eli or whatever. Like, based on any stats, any eye test, Eli Manning has been among the worst quarterbacks in the league for the last 2 to 3 years. And if you watched preseason, I mean, there was almost no quarterback more impressive than Daniel Jones. He didn't get to play a lot. He played 60 snaps, which is like, roughly around one game. But in that one game, in that 60 snaps, he went 29 of 34, 416 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs. Daniel Jones was an absolute baller in the preseason. The only reason he didn't make all preseason first team is because he didn't play enough. He's going to start week 3 at Tampa. I am optimistic that this offense and Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram will get a big jolt with Daniel Jones under center. I am excited. I would be adding Daniel Jones in deeper, two quarterback super flex type leagues with priority. Am I overreacting to the preseason performance from Daniel Jones, Evan?
I mean, I guess only time can tell, but just the level of athleticism that he adds to the offense and his arm strength, really. Both huge upgrades on Eli. I mean, Eli was just a fossil running around out there. And yeah, thank God we don't have to watch him anymore. Um, Daniel Jones, yeah, he was really aggressive pulling the trigger on downfield throws, really both at Duke and during the preseason. I mean, that was something that stuck out to me during the preseason. I think it can absolutely be good news for Evan Ingram, who really is the Giants' field stretcher. And then, when Golden Tate comes back and Sterling Shepard comes back, they've got at least, a somewhat viable NFL caliber, low-end NFL caliber pass catcher core altogether. Scott Barrett posted some stats from Pro Football Focus that they have been top 5 pass protecting offensive line so far. So you love to see that. And yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, I think he's going to have some moments like maybe some Mitchell Trubisky sort of, you know how Mitchell Trubisky had like spiked weeks last year. I have Daniel Jones in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I'm excited to start him going forward. They're going to face the Bucs this week without Devin White, their first round inside linebacker, who was a big time difference maker in the first 2 weeks when he was healthy.
Yeah, totally agree on Daniel Jones. And I'm also, you could make cases that Saquon was even like Saquon put out outrageous numbers, like top 3 fantasy numbers. But what he's going to do with a real quarterback under center, I think, is something that will be exciting. The Philadelphia Eagles, man, I don't know what happened, but Dallas Goedert got hurt in pregame, allowing Zach Ertz to play every single snap. They only had 2 tight ends up on the roster. Deshaun Jackson got hurt. Alshon Jeffrey got hurt. And man, if you would have told me before the game that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was going to play 74 out of 80 snaps and only catch like 1 ball for 4 yards, I would have told you you're absolutely insane. I kind of think that D. Jackson, Alshon are both going to miss again this week. Where are you placing Arcega-Whiteside, Mac Hollins, etc. on the waiver wire priority?
Yeah, thankfully I don't have to do the waiver wire article. We got Ryan on that because the waiver wire article is not easy, and it's situations like this that make it difficult. But yeah, the beat writers, Doug Peterson, very much made it sound like Alshon and Djax are not going to be playing this week against the Lions. I think that the first guy you go to is JJ Arcega. Well, the first guy you probably go to is Nelson Aguilar.
Mm-hmm.
All the Lions have just been getting creamed in the slot. In week 1, it was Larry Fitz. In week 2, it was Keenan Allen. I mean, and they even tried to stick Darius Slay on him in the slot and could not cover Keenan Allen. Wound up drawing 3 penalties, or else it would have been a much bigger day for Keenan Allen in week 2. But yeah, Aguilar has a good matchup in the slot against the Lions, and then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is going to be the guy on the outside getting. He's probably going to play like every single snap. So they're pretty close together. I do like the individual matchup for week 3 favoring Nelson Aguilar.
Okay, and also people want to know what to do with Miles Sanders. Obviously, he's not playing well. I think the coaches have noted that, and that was a concern. What he needed to do to separate from a committee was to play really well and just blow Jordan Howard and Darren Sproles out of the water. He's not doing that now. It's a major concern. Obviously, we don't want to drop Miles Sanders, but people are already asking the question, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, really shouldn't have been a guy that you were ever leaning on as an early season starter, and was a guy that we kind of knew he was going to have to work his way into a feature back role. And like you said, he has not done that. He has held on to the football, which was a problem for him at Penn State, but he's not finishing through final contact. He's bouncing too many runs outside. He's trying to get used to the running scheme and just the overall flow of the offense. And, they've had some offensive line. They've also lacked offensive line continuity. I mean, Jason Kelsey, their center, came out of last week's game, for instance, and they've had to juggle some guys up front. So everything is not clicking for their running game. He is playing the most in the backfield. He's still getting the most opportunities. But right now, I think you view him as an RB4 on your bench.
I was optimistic, or maybe not optimistic, but I was hopeful that with Tevin Coleman down for the 49ers, Matt Breida would become, not 50-50, but 60-40 or 70-30 or, God forbid, 75-25 over Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. But while this game was close in week 2, and it wasn't close for that long, but through 2.5 quarters when it was reasonably close, Matt Breida 13 touches, Raheem Mostert 11, Jeff Wilson 2. And I mean, Matt Breida was just shredding. I think he averaged like 10.5 yards per carry or something totally insane. So that was a little bit frustrating for me. Still like Matt Breida, obviously a smash play in season long. I just can't give him more than, 15 touches in a game. How do you see this running back thing working out? Is there any chance for Breida to get 20 touches in a game?
I don't think they want him there. I mean, look, the dude is, when he came out of school, Georgia Southern, he was like 184 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to continue to like him as an RB2 play, but for him to really get up into that RB1 range, like it's going to take kind of like, quote unquote, good fortune, and injuries are not good fortune, but it might take another guy getting hurt.
Yeah.
And, by the way, if you haven't already dropped Tevin Coleman, I would just do it, because he's got a high ankle sprain, which is typically a 4 to 6 week injury. And when he comes back, like, he's not going to take this backfield away from Mostert and Breida and Jeffrey Wilson. I do anticipate it continuing to be a 3-man committee in the receiver core. Debo's, this is a really frustrating situation because they've got 5 guys playing almost the same number of snaps. It's like the number 1 receiver in terms of snaps was at 34, and then the number 5 receiver was at like 22 in week 2. So it's a big 5-man rotation. Deebo Samuel, he was amazing in this week 2 game. I love the way that they used him. They got him going on like jet sweeps, an end around, big pass deep down the middle, some stuff along the sideline. I mean, they were using him everywhere, but he was the number 4 receiver in terms of snaps played in week 2. So these guys are just going to be really, really unreliable. I think George Kittle right now is the best buy low in all of fantasy football. Number 2 this week on Josh Hermsmeyer's air yards buy low model.
Love it. Yeah. We're going to talk more about buy low, sell high in the next episode, in the AFC, at the end of the AFC episode. The Seattle Seahawks, I'm excited about Chris Carson and the role in the pass game. What concerns me is he's fumbled, I believe, twice already this season. And he's been
3 times, man.
3 times.
Lost fumbles.
Yeah, and he's been inefficient. I mean, he's like under 4 yards a carry by a pretty wide margin. I'm not going to overreact to that after 2 weeks, but one of those was against the Bengals, who, were one of the worst teams against running backs last year, and then just got absolutely shredded by 3 undrafted free agents on San Francisco. Rashad Penny started to creep into Chris Carson's workload a little bit last week. Do you have concerns about where we're at with Chris Carson?
I think it was promising that after he lost a crucial fumble deep in Seahawks territory last week, they went back to him for a 4th and 1 carry pretty much immediately after that on their next possession, and he executed. So that gave me a little bit of a sigh of relief. But yeah, I started to get worried. I mean, Rashad Penny played more than he normally would have played last week, and he had a huge 37-yard just rocket launcher run for a touchdown in that game. I'm not terribly worried about Chris Carson, but I'm certainly more worried about him than I was last week.
Yeah, one other thing about Seattle I saw, I mean, DK Metcalf is dominating over Jerron Brown. I mean, Jerron Brown's out there a ton, but not getting any targets. And Russell Wilson likes throwing to DK Metcalf, even though DK Metcalf, if you look at his like next gen stats route tree, it's just all just like left side straight up the field, which is fine because he can win that way. I mean, that's just how he wins. And so we were on, Evan was on Tyler Lockett big time. And I think, it's going to keep flipping and flopping. They're going to be like, oh, we need to guard DK Metcalf. We need to guard Tyler Lockett. I mean, I'm still optimistic about DK Metcalf having some huge games this year. It's just so inefficient, so efficient when you're catching passes from Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's exactly how he was used at Ole Miss.
Yep.
He only played on one side of the field, only played on the left side of the field. And he just run goes and the occasional like screen. And, that's what he did. And I kind of like that the Seahawks are doing that. They're like, we're not going to ask you to do anything different. We're going to ask you to do what you are comfortable doing because we've got other versatile players. Will Dissly, by the way, coming up for them, huge. But Tyler Lockett, I mean, he had 17, 18 PPR points this last game, career high, 10 catches. It was kind of tilting that he didn't break any of those for a big play because that's what Tyler Lockett does. I mean, he was 17 yards per catch last season. But he ate kind of like we anticipated. And he had even despite not breaking a big play, had a big fantasy day in the box score. But yeah, Russell Wilson, that was one of the best games I have ever seen him play. That's not even exaggerating. Next Gen Stats had him getting the ball out in 1.8 seconds, the fastest time that they have recorded in an individual game since 2016. He was just on point, ripping up that man coverage defense of the Steelers.
Okay, the team that everybody wants to talk about is the Tampa Bay Bucks because a lot of people are rostering O.J. Howard on their season-long team, and O.J. Howard has only run a route on 45 of Jameis Winston's 75 dropbacks. Cameron Brate has run a route on 31. And so Bruce Arians doesn't use tight ends. Twitter, Evan, is out there taking victory laps. They're saying, we win. You see, we knew it. Bruce Arians doesn't use his tight end. O.J. Howard isn't being targeted, isn't running routes. What do we have to say to the O.J. Howard owners right now?
I mean, O.J. Howard just played like crap. In the first game, he lost a fumble in the end zone. He dropped a pass. He got a penalty. He finished with 32 yards on 5 targets. And then on the quick turnaround, going to the Thursday, I mean, they don't have time to game plan. They do one walkthrough before the game. He wasn't involved in the passing game plan. And Jameis Winston did not have a lot of attempts. It was like a Peyton Barber game. So when you understand what all led up to that, you can understand that why O.J. Howard was a 0 in week 2. I think that what you do with him in week 3 is if you can't find a better option, I don't know, going off the top of my head, I mean, I'd probably look at Will Dissly over him.
No,
I'd start Darren Waller over him. Vance McDonald was a guy that might have been dropped by some, fickle owners in week 1. I would certainly pick him back up. We talked about how he was very, very likely to bounce back in that week 2 game. I don't know. That's just probably weak suggestions going off the top of my head. Read the matchups column for sure for any ideas. But I think that you just treat him as a boomer bust guy right now because he's on kind of in the doghouse a little bit. I mean, that's how Bruce Arians has talked about him. He's got to play better or else we're not going to involve him in the passing game when he's fumbling the ball into the end zone. I mean, it's not like O.J. Howard isn't a talented guy. That's not in doubt. It's just he's played like shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I would disagree. I'm more likely to go down with the ship. I would play O.J. Howard at home against the Giants over Will Dissly and probably over Darren Waller. But I've been prone to get too stubborn with guys that I liked before the season. But yeah, I think, on a long week, they're going to find a way to get O.J. Howard more involved. Speaking of a long week, we got a lot of questions from people that want to know if Jameis is still going to be a viable starting quarterback going forward. Again, long week, home against the Giants. This would be a prime spot to me for Jameis and this past game to really have a pop-off game. I would be sticking with Jameis. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, the situation with O.J. Howard is just I am willing to kind of give a guy a wait-and-see week on my bench and try something else. And then if the dude, shows up with good usage and good production, I don't kick myself for benching him. I'm just okay, I'm going to roll with him the next week. That's kind of my process in situations like that. With Jameis, it's still kind of he's on the fringe still. Just because there are so many good quarterback options. And we have all of them at our disposal. I mean, we have not even hit any bye weeks yet. So he's fringy. and I mean, you're certainly not playing him over like Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson or anybody like that. So it just comes down to your options. Pat Thorman, we have one of the best rankers in the business. He's really going to help you be able to sort through all that. I mean, he's finished top 5 in Fantasy Pros rankings in 3 of the past 5 years.
Yep. Okay. By the way, Evan, before we move to the last team, I did want to note that Chris Godwin is now more expensive on both DraftKings and FanDuel than Mike Evans. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, like last week, I just wanted to say I was the first one to let everybody know that Chris Godwin was actually the Bucs' best receiver.
Okay. The Washington Redskins. I mean, there's not a lot to say here. I mean, Terry McLaurin looks like a legit, very good player, and he is being used in a way that if he had better quarterback play and better scheming and just a better offense around him, he's being used in a way that would be very exciting. All that said, it's still going to be a week-to-week battle for Terry McLaurin just because he plays for the Redskins. That's about all I had on them. Anything on the Redskins?
It was fun. The early Adrian Peterson touchdown was fun, but it got ugly real quick. And now playing the Bears, no thanks.
All right. That is going to do it for this NFC Team by Team podcast. The AFC version will be on the site, establishthorun.com. Will not be on iTunes, so go over to establishthorun.com, check it out, and we will see you there, hopefully. For Evan, for producer Luke, for Jerry barking like a maniac at the mailman today, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.